to deal with sex scandals? How serious is the problem? Do you think that the media are basically picking on the church as opposed to other institutions in society that have had similar problems?
Well, there's something true to that. And I'm always reluctant, to lead, as I'm doing right now, to lead with that, looking defensive. But I think that's certainly fair to say that this problem is a universal human problem. You can find it in almost every institution, every society. I would say in God's providence that it was brought to light so dramatically in the church to force, to bring it to the world's attention. And it's part of what the church is bearing, a legitimate punishment, I would say, but for the sake of the world, that what we've had to wrestle with, I think now is benefiting other institutions. But it is fair to say that the problem is much wider than Catholicism. One stat that I think is very interesting is this across the board and across the decades. You look at the numbers, and when they're presented in kind of a raw form, you say, how horrific. And of course, one act of child sex abuse is horrific. But when you look at the numbers, they almost always correspond roughly to the national average of about 4%. You look at men across society, roughly 4% engage in this behavior. That's almost how it breaks down across the board within the Catholic Church. So in that sense, too, it's unfair to say it's a uniquely Catholic problem. And having said all that, I think it is important that it's being brought to light precisely in that framework so that we can bring healing to it and maybe deeper instruction than to other institutions as well. I don't think the media is picking on the church in this measure. That, thank God for the media, that revealed the thing when the church, to be frank, was not as willing or able to deal with it. Thank God, in a way, for the Boston Globe that brought this thing to light. So I don't really quarrel with that. I think just as in the Old Testament, God using Cyrus. I mean, God can use even enemies of Israel to affect Israel in a positive way. Did God use enemies of the church in a way to help the church? Yeah, I think so.
Well, what do you make of the schism that seems to have been breaking out inside the Catholic Church at the upper echelons over the handling of the sex abuse crisis by the Vatican, for example?
I'm very hopeful the February meeting coming up, when the Pope is gathering the presidents of all the bishops' conferences from around the world. I'm very hopeful that will make some important moves. I'll confess to being disappointed. As a member of the Bishops' Conference last November, we gathered and we wanted very much to vote on some very specific measures, protocols that would address this issue. And the Vatican asked us to pause. They didn't say, it's over, don't do it. They said, pause, could you wait till February? I'll confess to being disappointed, along with most of my colleagues, I think. Might there be good reasons for that? Yeah, they didn't give us the reasons why we're to pause. It could be the Vatican wants a singular, universal protocol, didn't want us operating independently. There might be some canonical considerations. What we're proposing might have been out of step with canon law. That's why I'm hopeful the February meeting will take some very specific steps. So I wouldn't speak of schism. I think there's